Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. We're here at HUD's Brooke Mondale Auditorium to host a Twitter town hall meeting to talk about the 4-year anniversary of the Partnership for Sustainable Communities between HUD, DOT, and EPA. We have the pleasure of having Deputy Secretary Maurice Jones for HUD. We have EPA Acting Administrator Bob Perciasepi, and DOT Deputy Secretary John Percari joining us today. And without further ado, we'd like to hand it over to them to give us a quick opening statements.
Terrific. Well, thank you, and good afternoon, I guess, to most folks, depending on where you are. And welcome to HUD. I'm delighted to be hosting. I'm also delighted to have both Johns and Bob, I should say, John and Bob with me. And let me thank everybody for following us via Twitter and through this webcast. We are gathered because, I guess, yesterday marked the 4-year anniversary of this partnership, a collaboration between HUD, Transportation, and EPA that aspires to help communities improve their housing and transportation and to protect the environment. I'm delighted. For me, it's actually not my 4-year anniversary. It's a little over 1 year for me, but one of the first things I did when I got into this job was took a trip with these two gentlemen out to Indianapolis and Cincinnati to see the work that is going on the ground with our partnership and collaboration. And I was moved, I was encouraged, and I was certainly convinced that this is a partnership that's adding value to localities all over the country, and we want to do more. By working together, our agencies are helping communities cut red tape, get the most out of federal investments, attract new local, state, and other private resources that go to help the lives of the folks living in their communities. To date, the partnership has provided $4 billion in funding and technical assistance to projects in all 50 states, plus the District of Columbia and Puerto Rico. And we're proud of what we've been able to accomplish over the past 4 years, and welcome the chance to discuss with you and others how we can learn from what has happened over the past 4 years and then move forward to improve on that. This spring and summer, the agencies will be working together to host roundtable discussions in Denver, Arlington, Texas, Greenville, South Carolina, Los Angeles, Phoenix, Boston, and other communities. And in all of these communities, we're looking to gather feedback, and we want the good, bad, and the ugly. Tell us what's going well, tell us what's not going so well, and let's plan to correct those things moving forward. So I'm thrilled to be here with Bob and John and to host. And I want to hear your thoughts, and we all want to hear your thoughts, and what else we can do to help these communities. And most especially, we're looking forward to the next 3 to 4 years and touching as many communities as we can possibly touch. So with that, I'll stand down, and who goes next? Mr. Percari.
Thanks, Maurice, and Bob, it's great to be here with you as well. June 1st was my 4-year anniversary at DOT, and we all feel like we've made a lot of progress together. You know, the great thing about the partnership is it's kind of common sense writ large. This is, we are trying to respond to communities' needs in the ways that they bring them forth. They don't have issues that are neat little silos that can be handled one piece at a time. It calls for holistic solutions and an across-the-board response. And I know with my colleagues here and in other departments and agencies as well, that's really what energizes us, the ability to really be responsive to individual communities' needs in a way that actually helps them. And we can see the progress around the country. We can see where the federal government can be a partner in making progress, and we've made a lot of progress together. So I'm very much looking forward to this discussion and, in fact, building on the successes of the last 4 years.
Thanks, John and Maurice. It's great to be here with you guys. And HUD, thanks for hosting us today. This is just a real amazing anniversary, 4 years of working together and really building a strong partnership between our agencies, but most importantly, helping communities, whether they be cities, states, or counties, to achieve more by us coordinating our efforts. We've already coordinated over $4 billion of federal work at the state and local level, and so governors and county leaders are all benefiting from this. And most importantly, communities are benefiting from this in terms of better quality of life, reduced pollution, and actually economic development. One thing I want to say before we start is EPA is also releasing a report today, which you can get on our website, epa.gov, our built-in natural environment. I guess my simple answer to the information that's in here, or plug for the information in here, is if you're a neighborhood organization, a city or a county or a state, and you want to find a way to reduce pollution, save money, encourage economic development, you can find answers and ideas in there on how to do development. So we're very excited about that as well, and looking forward to this Twitter event.
Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us. And we'll get started with the first set of questions. So we have a question from Sustaining Gain that's asking us, density is a vital component of sustainable communities. How do suburbs get involved?
Well, there's been, I think we're all going to want a piece of this one. There's a lot of evidence around the country that as suburbs grow and age, the density is, for their continued vitality, is one of the key ingredients. What we try to bring to the party in the Department of Transportation is a transportation system that meets those evolving needs. For example, better transit service, a walkable, bikeable community that will attract more 24-hour uses and higher density as part of that. Those are some of the ingredients that help some of those suburbs evolve that lead to more vibrant communities.
And I would add, from our perspective, what we're definitely trying to do is to encourage regional planning, right? And the region involves usually a central city, at least one, and then suburbs, and it's planning around getting people to jobs, locating housing, connecting people with retail places to shop, schools, etc. So for us, it's all about trying to play a role in helping a region, suburbs, central city, and others plan better, plan smarter. And so that's where we're trying to hopefully add value.
I think there's a great way for suburbs to get involved, particularly if you look at the regional aspect that Maurice was just talking about. But when you look at transit and transportation choices, when you look at stormwater management, when you look at reducing trips to reduce pollution and greenhouse gases, and what is a growing movement in the country of having walkable communities for a quality of life, you put all those together, suburbs have a golden opportunity to develop around those transportation choices, manage their stormwater, and build livable, walkable communities. So I think this is a great opportunity to move forward in that direction.
Thank you. Next question comes to us from Leila Haxton. She asks, how can we encourage resiliency and post-disaster recovery, such as Sandy, the British Petroleum oil spill, and what's their impact in the environment and the economies?
This is a really timely question, and we're all living it in the Hurricane Sandy long-term recovery effort. For us in transportation, for the first time ever, we actually have a transit emergency relief program, and we're doing this differently than natural disaster relief has been done in the past. We're explicitly working with the affected transit agencies in the New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut metro area to rebuild to a more resilient standard. And that includes building above the advisory-based floodplain elevation. It includes some very cost-effective work to make sure that some of the flooding that happened is less likely to happen in the past. You know, in Hurricane Sandy, every tunnel under the Hudson and most of the tunnels under the East River flooded. The amount of damage is astronomical. rebuilding in a more resilient way will provide ongoing transit and transportation services during a natural disaster and immediately after it, but most importantly will preserve that infrastructure. We have found that it would have been a lot more cost effective to build some resiliency in the first place than to completely rebuild these systems.
Ditto for housing and communities. We are we are also finding that now that if you take Sandy as the example, now that we're in the process of rebuilding, we want to make sure that we're rebuilding smarter than the original infrastructure, if you will, which in most cases means having a higher standard when it comes to building for floods, when it comes to where you're placing, really, things like where you're placing the boiler. I mean, it's simple stuff, but it's stuff that if you're getting flooded, if you're getting a hurricane, it matters. So we're also working with local communities around building resiliency into the housing development that is being built anew. In addition, we're looking at the rehab work and making sure that in the rehab work that we're participating in, that we're also building to a new standard, if you will.
I think I would add to my colleagues' comments here the real opportunity to build resiliency, looking at how natural systems can help in the long haul. Whether you're looking at the Gulf of Mexico and the great expanse of the Mississippi Delta, or in New York and New Jersey in terms of coastal wetlands, coastal sand dunes, all these things can help in the resiliency in the future of future storms. But infrastructure is really vital. We have to be able to make sure that the infrastructure is rehabilitated in a way that will make it turn around more quickly after the storm is over. It may be down for a while the storm is underway, but then we won't have many months of recovery. Sewage treatment plants, for instance, along the Passaic River, along with several other ones, probably put about 11 billion gallons of raw sewage into the New York Harbor during the month afterward until we could get them going. So when we rebuild those places, we need to make sure the electrical systems, the pumps, and everything else is up at the same elevations we're looking at for the housing. So there's a real opportunity to look at the infrastructure and natural systems together to improve resiliency.
Great, thank you. Our next question comes to us from Sustainable Future, which asks, how can the federal government help cities innovate and scale up sustainable pilots to the city and state level?
It's a great question, and I love the premise of the question because there's this common misconception that programs and policies are built in Washington kind of from the top down. The real innovation is actually from the bottom up, and if I know my colleagues and I get to see this all over the country, the real innovation is happening at the local government level, and making sure that we assist that and capture that and use that as a best practice wherever possible is one of the things that we all are very focused on. Because no two areas are exactly the same, and both the issues, the needs, and the solutions are different, we're watching very closely those innovations and building on them and making sure that we're as flexible as possible, again, for a transportation system that's literally built from the ground up, not the top down.
Yep, I would echo that and add 2 or 3 other things. One is the premise of this partnership is that we're going to work together to make it easier to work with the federal government. And so one way that we can help localities across the country who are doing innovative things is to make sure we're not getting in the way. All right, that's sort of like first do no harm. So if we've got environmental reviews in the 3 areas, we've got to figure out how to make sure that an environmental review satisfies all of us. And so getting rid of the red tape is a big issue. I'd say 2 other things for us. We invest in these innovations locally, and the hope is that our investment will not only help folks scale, but will help them attract and leverage other dollars, particularly private sector dollars. So I think a big role for us is to put our monies where our mouths are and hopefully bring the private sector to the table with us. And then the last thing I would say is we do have the benefit of seeing what's happening across the country, right? And hopefully being able to share best practices with localities, many of whom are grappling with the same problems that they're trying to solve. And I think we have a role to play in trying to connect people with other parts of the country that are finding ways to solve these same problems, and also to disseminate the information, that's the intelligence that's being gathered in these various parts of the country.
It's hard to add to what was just said, but integrating our programs, the environment, housing, and transportation, coordinating it with the local needs is really the key to this program, and leveraging private dollars as well as state and local dollars is what we're seeing happening when we're coordinated.
That's great. I think our next question will actually help put that into a different kind of context, since we've been talking about local partnerships. Let's also talk about federal partnerships. So Chelsea Takahashi asks, do you think that the USDA could become a part of the work that the Partnership for Sustainable Communities is doing in building linkages between both economic development and smart growth?
Short answer is yes, absolutely. While the three entities represented here may be the founding partners, so to speak, of the partnership, we bring in others as they can be helpful, and I think you'll see more of that in the future, where other departments and agencies at the federal level with their state and local colleagues and their private sector counterparts are actually working together. Because the issues and the needs are different in every community, the partnership and its response needs to be a little bit different in each community too.
Yeah, again, I second that emotion. I think USDA is an additional partner that is a candidate for us. I think there are other potential partners at the federal level too, and so we have talked about expanding this partnership to include more federal partners, and the USDA is certainly one that is a prime candidate.
And they've already been coordinating with us. There's a number of reports and projects we've put out where we've coordinated very closely with the USDA. Small towns and rural communities are not an area that we're avoiding here. We are working in some of those communities now. USDA has assets and resources that would coordinate with some of our work that will continue to improve our ability in those areas.
That's great. Talking about the Department of Agriculture, here comes another question where we can actually get quite a lot, I'm sure, from Christine Absher, who asks, will the partnership help sustain rural lifestyles?
Absolutely. There's this common misconception that the partnership is only about urban areas. It's about the entire country. I was particularly struck at one point, I was in Bismarck, North Dakota, and the quality of life issue that was most important for the residents in North Dakota was actually aging in place. It was being able to stay in your home. And that means, for example, having transportation when you can no longer drive to get to the doctor and the grocery and to church. Knowing that part of a sustainable community partnership is every bit as important in a rural area as it is in an urban area is, I think, one of the underpinnings of the partnership that we have. Again, these are what we do and how we do it really depends on the local needs, and there are some very acute and important rural needs out there that we think the partnership can help address as well.
Again, I want to agree with that, and to just add, the the issues. So from HUD's standpoint, one issue is making sure we're helping municipal governments and others deal with homelessness, adequate supplies of quality, affordable housing for folks who are transitioning from homelessness. Well, rural areas have as big, if not bigger, issue with homelessness, maybe not from sheer numbers, but if you look at size versus population as any urban area. And so, you know, the issues and the applicability of the partnership for rural areas and our aspirations to make an impact in the rural areas are just as great as in the urban areas.
I concur. And an interesting perspective on this is that many of our larger urban areas are trying to recreate that livable community that is walkable and sustainable inside the larger whole, and can learn a lot from sustainable and livable rural communities, which have been trying to maintain that type of lifestyle for many years. And so there's a real right now there's a real mutually beneficial exchange of information in that regard. So I think it's a very encouraging effort for us to be engaged in those rural communities and small towns.
Great. Well, let's switch topics a little bit here and talk a little bit more about local partnerships. And so David Blick here asks us, what has the Partnership for Sustainable Communities done to reach out to other nonprofit partners such as the National Main Street Center or state or local historic preservation groups?
I think, David, you've put your finger on one of the key ingredients, one of the success factors for the partnership, because as I'm thinking about the different communities across the country where the partnership has worked together, one common element has been local, regional, or national nonprofits and the faith community that have worked together. And in every community that the partnership is active in, there's been a very strong connection with nonprofit partners. There's been a fair amount of capacity building as part of that. There have been opportunities for the nonprofits, which are a big part of the social fabric in many communities, to actually increase their visibility and work across some of the normal silos that they're in as well, and be more comprehensive.
I think what I would add is as we think about moving forward, we need to do more of this. We need more nonprofit, philanthropic, and corporate partners to help us to do this work with the local governments and others that we're partnering with. And so this partnership is certainly about us working with other partners. Included in those other partners, though, are the nonprofit and philanthropic sectors. Absent their being on board, the chances of maximizing our success are just not as great.
It's interesting. Part of what we're trying to do here is use community as an organizing principle. In other words, how can we organize our programs around community? And that means working with that community all across the board, from nonprofits to the local political jurisdictions. And even at EPA, some of our grant programs do enable capacity building for some of the nonprofits. So I'm pretty excited about that aspect of what we're doing.
That's great. Let's talk a little bit more about result-oriented type of question. So we have Kalima Rose here who's talking. What exciting progress has the Partnership for Sustainability, Sustainable Communities seen in terms of economic resilience as well as climate resilience?
First, on the economic resilience side, it's great to see local examples of communities where the partnership has been working together, and where you see, for example, we're able to use parts of the transportation network, transit service, for example, to serve emerging employment nodes in a way that they have not been served before. To see some of the basic local vibrancy from community markets that literally bring a community back to life. To see that relatively inexpensive investments like hiker-biker trails and on-road bicycling opportunities breathe new life into communities. That kind of resilience and redundancy in transportation, I think, is one of the hallmarks of the way the partnership has worked.
Yeah, I would say the same thing on the housing side. What we're seeing with respect to folks if you will, rehabbing housing and retrofitting housing, and thinking about placing housing, if you will, along accessible transportation routes, so that families, if you will, can live in downtown and have access to jobs and retail. That's what makes a community resilient. And so that's what this partnership is really about, trying to facilitate.
It's sort of a simple formula here. I mean, if you have transit choice, if you have walkable and bikeable communities with green infrastructure and brownfield redevelopment, what you're going to have is reduced greenhouse gas emissions, and you're going to have increased economic resiliency, because this is where businesses are going to want to locate. So this is an important part of our equation here, and one that makes it actually so much fun to work on.
Great. Next question comes to us from Danielle Bergstrom, who asks, how have transit-oriented development funds provided through the Partnership for Sustainable Communities helping contribute to better housing opportunities throughout?
Well, there are specific examples around the country, but I'd also say on the policy side, one of the things that we've tried to do in transportation, for example, with the New Starts process for transit projects, is actually change the criteria to where it accommodates what the real needs are on the ground in communities throughout America. So for the first time, it's not just a simple and single-minded calculation of cost-benefit, which does not typically take into account local community needs, but it includes criteria like affordable housing, environmental justice, brownfields remediation, the kinds of larger issues that are important to build and rebuild sustainable communities.
Yeah, I don't think I have anything to add to that.
I like the addition in your thoughts, John, to brownfields development, because many communities that we get involved with transit-oriented development, it's a mixed use. And having the ability to reuse some recycled urban landscapes in a mixed use way that is safe and protects the environment is a good part of what we're trying to think of. So I like that.
Great. Our next question comes from Maria Zimmerman, who asks, how can we further involve the states? Many of these programs are run at federal level, and how can we involve more states in this partnership?
Maria, it's a great question. We have some states that have jumped in with both feet as really willing partners and have worked very closely with us. Again, in transportation, a lot of what we do is through the states. So if we're not in partnership with our state colleagues, we're not going to get anywhere. While it hasn't been uniform and across the board, we see overall real progress in the states seeing the Partnership for Sustainable Communities as a tool in their toolkit, whether it's an urban area, rural area, or an emerging part of their state's economy.
Yeah, we at HUD, we work actually primarily with local governments, but certainly the states are actively engaged in the housing and community development spaces that we're working in. And so I think this is one of the big opportunities moving forward is to get the states more engaged in the partnership and get the partnership in more of a dialogue with what's going on at the state level, because there's no question about it that the states are also trying to add value to localities wrestling with these problems. So this one is an area where I think we have an opportunity to bring more partners to the table.
We, at EPA, many of our programs similar to DOT are delegated to states, so they are almost automatically part of it. But we also have some coordinated problem solving that we've been trying to do with governors as well, get governors engaged themselves and do some project problem solving with them so that they can see the value and add their own resources, which is happening in virtually every case.
Our next question talks a little bit more again about federal partnerships, this time around with the Department of Public Health. So Marta Perales asked, I would love to see a partnership with the Department of Public Health to help build healthier communities. Just any comments on that?
Well, again, since the partnerships are really built from the ground up, we tend to have a lot of that interaction at the local level. And there's this kind of virtuous cycle of the partnership tends to bring clearer thinking, better designs, more holistic communities, which mean, among other things, in most cases, walkable communities. You can obviously see the health benefits from that. It also means cleaning up the environment, and as Bob mentioned, for example, on things that may not be as obvious, like stormwater management, water quality, where that too leads to better health outcomes.
No question that I think the federal Health and Human Services Department, as well as state and local health departments, are critical potential additional partners for us. I know from our perspective, healthy homes are what we're looking for, and so the health component of housing is an issue that we have been wrestling with for quite a while, and clearly needs to be something that we can capitalize on here. When you think about how much time people spend in their housing, both parents and children, and the influence that housing has on health, no question that this is an area where we can do some more work.
I'll just agree. I mean, sustainable communities are healthier communities, so I mean, there's a lot of reasons why, including reduced pollution. So.
Darren Bucks asked us, how does the partnership plan in the coming years to further ingrain its mission into the mainstream activity of your agencies and programs? It's a great question.
It is a great question, Darren. And first and maybe foremost, this becomes ingrained and institutionalized in part because it really energizes our people. And I know it's true of all of our departments and agencies that we're all gratified that we can see results on the ground and see progress. That tends to build a culture within our agencies that, if anything, wants to do more in terms of partnerships. You also see it in our programs. Whether it's our Federal Highway Administration actually working very closely with local communities on things like complete streets and street diets, and making sure that it's serving a larger transportation need. That would be one example. The same is true of transit and intercity passenger rail as well, because it's kind of a unifying principle behind a lot of what we do. It tends to focus and energize our people very effectively.
Yeah, I would submit that this might be the biggest opportunity of all the ones we've talked about. If we can figure out a way to make what we're doing here a bigger piece or a bigger influence over our mainstream programs, it will just have, it's a game changer. So for us, we are now moving to taking the area within HUD that was really the champion for this partnership and making it more part of the mainstream of the enterprise. But you've got to do that in a way that it changes the rest of the programs and not vice versa, right? And so the question is how you take what we're learning here to be better partners, to be quicker, to be more nimble, to work more together, and to integrate that into the rest of our mainstream programs, and in a way that influences it and not vice versa. And so that's the big challenge, and I think that's going to be the challenge for all of us. The other thing I would say is, we all, as we look at our respective missions, we cannot at HUD accomplish our mission without transportation and EPA being a partner. I mean, what we want to do with communities will only be half fulfilled at best unless we are working together. So the other compelling piece that I think is pushing this to become part of the mainstream of our enterprise is just pure necessity. We can't do our job without it.
A key example that's already working is our ability as 3 agencies to coordinate some of our grant giving. That sometimes seems like an insurmountable institutional barrier. Yet we are finding ourselves slowly but surely able to move in a situation where each of us will give credit to grant recipients or grant applications that are also capitalizing on grants from one of the other agencies, so that we can compound. It's like compounded interest. We can continue to build on that, and that builds at the grassroots part of our agencies that desire to work together to build that common cause, so to speak.
True. Our next question comes from Brock Howell, who asks more of a civic engagement question. How can sustainable communities and placemaking play a greater role in civic engagement, voter mobilization, and democracy?
Brock, that's a great question. And one of the ways for us is, if you think about our Tiger Grant program, and in a constrained funding environment where we're cutting back on virtually everything, Congress has continued to actually fund additional rounds of Tiger Grants. For the first time for us in transportation, it's a direct link with local communities. I mentioned how this works from the ground up rather than the top down. What it's meant in practical terms is the communities that organize, that are articulate, that have a community vision, that get their act together, are the ones that typically get those grants. I should point out that my colleagues from HUD and EPA are part of that evaluation process. So we're not just looking at the transportation element, we're looking more holistically across the community. And I think that's a good practical example of a kind of a race to the top for these limited grants that drives community involvement, that brings more local participation, and that helps communities articulate that local vision that is particular to their community.
I think when you think about this, that the greatest challenge facing all communities these days across the country is how you ensure that they are resilient and sustainable, right? You know that they're going to take a hit of some form or fashion at some point, right? The question isn't that, it's how they bounce back. What is it that they are doing to ensure that their communities are resilient and sustainable? And it's the job, particularly now, of local leaders to mobilize their voters, to mobilize their communities, to mobilize engagement around those things that are weaknesses, if you will, in resiliency and sustainability locally. So I think this is a great question. I would also answer it by saying, I think we can be partners in that, but at the end of the day, we have to have local champions who are able to articulate to the voting populace in their area, this is important for us to be competitive, for us to be sustainable, and for us to be resilient. Whether you're on the coast when you're facing the risk of hurricanes and flooding, you're in the middle part of the country where you're facing the risk of tornadoes and brush fires, or wherever you are, the question is how you make sure that your voting population is not indifferent to these issues. This is, I don't know if a leader has a greater challenge today in communities across the country.
I look at it in a pretty simple way again. In order for a community to really be competitive with the incentives we are providing, they have to be organized. And the fact that they will get organized is going to bleed into the other areas of community involvement, from voting to local elections. And so it's just going to build that capacity at a local level to be engaged. And I think that is a beautiful thing.
Great. We have a great question, which leads us to a little bit more of a socioeconomic aspect of things, but an important question nonetheless. So how has the partnership improved the livability of disadvantaged, underrepresented communities, and how can those improvements be sustained?
Cheryl, that's probably one of the key questions that we all grapple with. We have tried to focus the funds that we have, the planning efforts in communities that in many cases are underserved, disadvantaged, and historically have been neglected in many ways. We're still struggling with that. I think we're kind of at the ground floor of how we respond to that. But one way that we know we should be working that issue is we look at transportation as a means to an end, not an end in itself. And so as it relates to connecting people with opportunities, affordable housing opportunities, environmental remediation, those are all ways and opportunities that transportation can be that kind of enabler. It's doing it in a way that actually helps the community make sense and forms a sustainable foundation for future development and redevelopment that I think is really the trick. And I think we would all stipulate up front that we are working on that and we have more progress to be made.
Yeah, I would just start with the last point, which is I think we're all pretty humble about the challenge here, that this is a challenging job. I'd say from the standpoint of us trying to work together to help communities become more livable and to serve the underserved. The notion that we're trying to have transportation that connects with quality, affordable housing, that connects with smart use of land, these are all ingredients of a healthy, vibrant economy that produces and sustains jobs for folks, and that's really what we're trying to contribute to. But again, this is definitely a marathon, not a sprint, and so we stay humble at this.
Yes, humble is a good attribute here, but I think we've entered this with the concept that the community is our main interest, and at EPA, environmental justice is a really important priority, and both John and Maurice have mentioned it. And part of the reason that I think we're together, as opposed to continuing on our missions alone, is that it's the mix of our work, whether it be housing stabilization, whether it be transit choices that will enable lower income communities to build themselves up, or whether it be making sure there's a clean environment so the health of those communities are improved. Those things work together to create diverse and resilient and healthy communities, and I think that's what we're trying to do with this partnership.
Well, we are out of time, gentlemen. So, to those of you who have been following our webcast, thank you very much. For those of you who are continuing to follow us on Twitter, the conversation could continue. Thank you again for your time and for your insights.
Thank you, George.
Thank you.